All right, so today we're going to be doing a sort of overview of overviews. We're just doing a quick introduction to all of the creation tools that you're going to get, and we're going to do overviews on each of these just in a little bit. So what we're looking at right now is the character creation UI. Now, I want to be clear that these UIs are not in a finished state, but all of the functionality is pretty much here. So really quickly, what you're going to see is you, of course, can set the name and the strengths and weaknesses of the character. You can also include a backstory for them. You can set their abilities here and their equipment here. This is all things that are going to be able to be edited directly. You'll jump to the UI that edits them. The visuals, so you can import or select a different skin. For instance, let's say that we were going to just all of a sudden make Magnor look like Orin the wizard. So let's not do that. But you can also set their sounds, their voices here. Again, you can choose from the ones that we are going to include, which will probably be over 30 for characters, or you can create your own. So now let's jump over to editing, say, hamstring. So here it'll basically just save the state as it was, and you jump over to editing the ability. So now here we are in the ability editing. We're seeing Magnor still because he's going to be the one that is being used for all of these abilities here as far as the stats are concerned, because it matters, of course, who's using it. You can override that by setting the entity here, but we won't do that for now. So this is your main view. Here we can change the amount of action points that this costs, and you can see that the numbers are automatically updated there. You could add cooldowns, you could add uses per battle, etc. And you can, of course, create any pattern you want as far as the AE is concerned. You can then go over your logic plate. The logic plate is, all pretty intuitive. You can actually just hit the subtract button to delete something, or you can just grab and drag off of the panel in order to delete it. If you want to add something, you can actually just do things like alt-clicking or just hit the plus button. If you alt-click, you're just copying, and then you can modify it. So here we're going to add the statistic again. Everything is searchable, so you can just sort of type in statistic. Then once you have this highlighted here, right beneath it, you're going to see exactly what you're doing. So we're going to add the debuff and its mobility, and then you can control the weight. So you can bring down the weight and increase the damage that you're going to do. If you didn't want to do a damage range, you click on the range here and you adjust the variance. So it's all very quick and easy to do. Then we can go on to the cosmetic. In the cosmetic, you're going to be able to set new images if you wanted to. You can also change the color of the trim of the card and the border. So that this is all just, for your own looks here. It's not actually going to affect gameplay. But it's a nice way to distinguish one card from the other, especially if you wanted to use the same image or something. So then you can also play the ability media, and it'll jump over here, and even if it's an AE or whoever's using it or whatever will be taken into account, and you'll be able to actually see the ability being executed there. So you can actually change the ability media here as well. So if you wanted to make it, say, Whirlwind or Reckless Whirlwind or whatever you want to do, come down here and you'll see it happen. So we're not going to save these changes, but we're just going to jump over to the enemy creation, which is going to be very similar to the way that we created our character, except they're not going to have equipment. Again, you get to set major strengths and weaknesses. You can add backstories. You can set their abilities. Now they can have up to 5 because they gain 1 per rank. You can also display them at different ranks here. And of course, this is also going to matter if you inspect them. You'll be able to see what they get and their statistics, their health, everything at that at that setting. So if you go to Adept, obviously you're going to see they only have 2 abilities. At Novice, they'd only have 1 ability. You can see their stats there, so it's very easy to be able to tell how powerful your enemy is going to be. You can come back over here and add another strength, for instance, and you can also see exactly how much it's going to affect their abilities. So here I'm looking at Bonk doing 103 to 308. If I take off power, does 95 to 284. But if you notice, if I add power, the other stats are going to suffer for it a little bit. So it's very easy to min-max if that's what you're into here. We'll jump back over to the character creation here. And now we'll look at some other options. So here in the character creation, you can see that they're already wielding the weapons that they should be, wielding. If we wanted to edit that weapon, let's say we're going to edit the Whirlwind Axe from Magnor. We can jump over. It's the same thing. We can do common, uncommon, rare, epic, legendary to see how it would, the stats it's going to have and how it would function at those levels. If we wanted to, we can, of course, change the stats that it gets at these levels. We can change the ability that it's going to get when it hits, in this case, uncommon, since it's a weapon. And here we can change the appearance on the character. We can obviously change the appearance entirely, but we can adjust how the character holds it. We can adjust the size, so we can get a teeny tiny axe, and then we can get a big axe. Anything that you want to do, you can do here. You can change the way that it's held in the hand and everything. And again, these are the things that I'll go into more detail when we're actually doing the overview of these particular screens. So now we're going to go to the ability media creation. And here is where you're going to be able to basically set your visuals and sounds for your abilities. Now, right now I have my sound muted just so that I can do this recording, but of course I would be playing the sound here too. You have sound control down here. That's obviously probably going to change the way that it looks. But you'll have sound control so that if you're set it to a loop like this, you're editing, you're not constantly hearing a shotgun going off over and over and over again. So that's a nice little feature. So very quickly, you're going to have your cast animation. The cast animation is what happens the moment that you start casting. If you wanted to add a cast animation, like here, I'm just going to add some little wind that rises. You can just do that. You can say when it happens. So you have a lot of control here, which we'll delve into when we do this overview. You can add, custom sound effects. You can add after images that play from one point to another. In this case, since he's just shooting, you're not going to see too much on the after images. It requires, motion, but you have control of that there. You'll also have control over the actual conveyance. Right now we're using the projectile system in order to basically blast these guys. I can just change that. So let's say I just change it to, fire arrow. Not that I would, but now he should fire a flaming arrow at people. Now these things here, these projectile medias, are ones that you can create too, and we're going to take a look at that as well. You're also able to control, of course, animation, both the animation of the character using or the enemy using the ability, and you can also look at the animation that happens whenever the enemy gets hit. So we'll just select another thing here. Let's do an arc shot. So the media will finish playing out, and then it'll switch, and we'll do an arc shot. So I can zoom out here. I have control again of these windows. I can zoom in, zoom out, so that I can see. In this case, it's kind of tough since the arrow arcs all the way up, but that way you can get a good look at the way that your ability media will look. So finally, we're going to go to the projectile media creation screen. This is the most advanced of all of these screens. This is where you can create visuals for your ability media. This is something that you don't have to do. You can just use ones that exist, but you can actually even import an image to use as your projectile itself. You have a lot of controls here. Again, this is just a very brief overview. We'll go into a lot more detail on this one. But you've got the launch parameters, the number of projectiles that you're firing, the time between the projectiles. So these are all immediately updated, so you can kind of play around with it and just kind of eventually get the look you want. You can control the flight path of these things, so you can add modifiers. Right now we have an arc setting. We can actually increase the speeds or the acceleration if we wanted that. We can do noise. So we just add noise to the path. And again, these are all things that can be controlled here. So you can amp up the noise or tone it down. You can select what happens when they impact the burst media, the sounds, all that. And then you also have an after impact control. So for instance, if the orbs were to come here, stop, and then rise up, you can set all of that here. And so these are basically just things that you would do if you were trying to be, very advanced in your creation. And so that's basically, aside from the game creation down here, and game mode creation, which is just a simplified version of game creation that you can do to add modifiers or sort of mutators to your game. That's basically what you're going to be using.